Your brain is a masterpiece of efficiency and instinct, built to navigate the world with lightning speed. But have you ever stopped to wonder, how do you actually think? Why do you sometimes make snap decisions without a second thought, while other times, even simple choices leave you stuck in hesitation? And most importantly, can you trust the way you think? Imagine this. You're in a room filled with people, and someone suddenly asks you, "What's 2 plus 2?" Instantly, the answer pops into your mind. No effort, no hesitation. Now, what if they ask you, "What's 17 by 24?" Your mind slows down. You focus. You engage in deliberate thinking. Two completely different ways of processing information, one fast and intuitive, the other slow and methodical. This is the foundation of Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Kahneman, a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, reveals that your mind operates using two systems. System 1 is fast, automatic, and instinctual. It reacts before you even realize you're thinking. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and logical. It takes effort and concentration. These two systems work together, but they don't always work well. They shape your choices, your biases, and even your memories, sometimes helping you, sometimes leading you astray in ways you don't even notice. This audiobook takes you deep into Kahneman's groundbreaking research. We'll uncover how these systems drive your decisions, where they go wrong, and how you can take back control. By the end, you won't just understand your mind. You'll learn how to think better, faster, and more clearly than ever before. System 1 and System 2. The two modes of thinking. Imagine you're driving down a quiet road, lost in thought. The turns and stops come naturally. You aren't consciously thinking about pressing the pedals or checking the mirrors. You just do it. Now imagine someone suddenly asks you to solve 17 times 24 in your head. Immediately, your brain shifts gears. You pause. You focus. Your mind begins to work in a completely different way. These two mental states represent the two systems of thinking described by Kahneman. System 1 is fast, automatic, and intuitive. It handles most of our daily judgments without effort, recognizing faces, sensing danger, understanding emotions. It operates without conscious thought, constantly forming impressions and reactions. System 2, on the other hand, is slow, deliberate, and effortful. It's engaged when we solve problems, analyze data, or focus intently on a task. Unlike System 1, it requires attention and can be easily disrupted when we're tired or distracted. Here's an example. If I say 2 plus 2, your answer appears instantly. That's System 1. But if I ask 17x24, you'd have to stop and think. That's System 2 at work. These two systems work together seamlessly. Most of the time, System 1 runs the show, handling day-to-day decisions quickly and efficiently. But when complex decisions arise, System 2 steps in, though not always as effectively as we'd like. The tension between these two systems explains many of the biases and errors that shape our thinking. Cognitive biases. When System 1 gets it wrong, System 1 is powerful, but it has a flaw. It often jumps to conclusions. It sees patterns where none exist, relies on gut feelings, and takes shortcuts. While these shortcuts, known as heuristics, often serve us well, they can also lead to predictable mistakes or biases. Take the availability heuristic. If you hear about a plane crash on the news, you might suddenly feel like flying is dangerous, even though statistically, flying is far safer than driving. The vividness of the plane crash story makes it more available in your memory, distorting your perception of risk. Or consider anchoring. If a store advertises a jacket at $300, but then discounts it to $150, you might feel like you're getting a bargain, even if the jacket is only worth $100. Your mind anchors to the original price, influencing your judgment. System 1 also struggles with probability. If I tell you about a quiet, bookish man named Steve and ask if he's more likely to be a librarian or a farmer, you might say librarian, because he fits your stereotype. But in reality, farmers vastly outnumber librarians, making it statistically far more likely that Steve is actually a farmer. This is an example of the representativeness heuristic, where we judge likelihood based on how well something matches a stereotype rather than actual probability. These biases and heuristics are built into our thinking, shaping the way we perceive the world. They help us make quick decisions, but they also lead us astray in systematic ways. By understanding these biases, we can train ourselves to think more critically and rely on System 2 cognitive biases. The hidden traps of thinking. Every day, you make countless decisions: what to eat, what to buy, how to react to a conversation. You'd like to think these choices are rational, guided by logic and reason. But what if I told you that many of your decisions are influenced by hidden mental shortcuts, biases that shape the way you perceive the world? These are called cognitive biases, and they affect everything from our finances to our relationships. The anchoring effect. Imagine you walk into a store and see a watch priced at $500, but today, it's on sale for $250. It feels like a steal. But did you ever stop to think whether the watch was worth $250 in the first place? This is the anchoring effect. Your brain latches onto the first number you see and uses it as a reference point for all subsequent judgments. Stores and marketers use this bias all the time to make discounts seem bigger than they really are. The availability heuristic. Now think about how we perceive danger. After watching news reports of a plane crash, many people feel afraid of flying, even though driving is statistically far more dangerous. This is the availability heuristic at work. Your mind tends to judge the likelihood of an event based on how easily examples come to mind. The more vivid or recent the memory, the more you overestimate its frequency or risk. This bias explains why people fear shark attacks more than slipping in the bathroom, despite the latter being far more common. The confirmation bias. Have you ever read an article and felt like it perfectly aligned with what you already believed? That's the confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out and favor information that supports what we already think while ignoring or dismissing evidence to the contrary. This bias reinforces existing beliefs and makes it difficult to see the full picture. It's why debates on politics, health, or even sports can feel so polarized. Our brains naturally filter information to fit our preconceived notions. These are just a few of the many cognitive biases that influence our thinking. They help us make quick decisions, but they can also lead us astray in predictable ways. By recognizing these biases, you can learn to question your assumptions, think more critically, and ultimately make better decisions in everyday life. Loss aversion and the power of framing. Why do losses feel so much worse than wins feel good? Why do we cling to failing investments, refuse to change jobs, or panic over small setbacks? The answer lies in a powerful psychological force: loss aversion. Imagine you're given a choice. You can take a guaranteed $500 or gamble for a shot at $1,000, with a 50% risk of walking away with nothing. What would you do? Now, what if I told you that you must choose between losing $500 for sure or taking a 50% chance to lose $1,000? Same math, different framing. But the second choice feels much scarier, doesn't it? That's loss aversion at work. Losses hit us harder than equivalent gains. Winning $100 is nice, but losing $100? That stings twice as much. It's why people hold on to bad stocks, avoid risks, and hesitate to make big changes, even when the rewards are worth it. The power of framing. Now let's talk about how choices are presented, something psychologists call framing. The way information is framed completely shifts how we react. Take this example. A doctor tells you a procedure has a 90% survival rate. Sounds reassuring, right? But what if they said there's a 10% chance of death? Same numbers, but suddenly it feels riskier. Framing is everywhere. Marketers know you're more likely to buy 90% lean beef than 10% fat beef, even though they're identical. A store discount sounds better when it says, save $50 instead of now $100. It's the same reason politicians, advertisers, and even the media carefully choose how to present information to subtly influence your choices. Loss aversion and framing control more of our decisions than we realize. But once you recognize these biases, you can take back control. The next time you're avoiding risk, ask yourself, am I afraid of an actual loss or just the feeling of losing? And when faced with a choice, don't just accept how it's framed. Reframe it yourself and see the bigger picture. By doing this, you'll make smarter, clearer, and more confident decisions without fear holding you back. The overconfidence bias. Why we think we know more than we do. Imagine you're asked to estimate how long it will take you to complete a simple project maybe organizing your files or finishing a report. You confidently say, a couple of hours tops, but then distractions pile up, unexpected obstacles appear, and suddenly, what seemed like a quick task stretches into days. Sound familiar? That's the overconfidence bias in action. Humans have an incredible ability to trust their own judgments, even when those judgments are wildly inaccurate. We overestimate our knowledge, our abilities, and even our predictions for the future. This isn't just about personal projects. Overconfidence affects financial markets, business decisions, and even political strategies. History is filled with examples of leaders and experts who were absolutely certain about their plans, only to be proven disastrously wrong. The illusion of knowledge. One reason overconfidence thrives is because we mistake familiarity for understanding. Just because you've read a few articles on investing doesn't mean you can predict the stock market. Just because you recall a few facts about history doesn't mean you fully grasp its complexities. Yet, our brains crave certainty. We like to believe we know things, even when our knowledge is shallow. Take a simple question. How does a bicycle work? Most people think they can explain it. But when asked to draw one from memory, they often make critical mistakes. This is called the illusion of explanatory depth. We assume we understand something deeply, when in reality, our knowledge is surprisingly thin. Overconfidence in decision-making. This bias becomes dangerous when it influences high-stakes decisions. In finance, investors regularly overestimate their ability to pick winning stocks. They trade frequently, convinced they can outsmart the market, when in reality, most would be better off with simple, long-term investments. In medicine, doctors sometimes place too much faith in their diagnoses, overlooking alternative possibilities. In war, leaders underestimate their enemy's strength, leading to catastrophic miscalculations. So how do we combat overconfidence? The first step is humility, recognizing that no matter how much we think we know, there's always more to learn. The best decision-makers question their assumptions, seek diverse opinions, and acknowledge uncertainty. Instead of saying, I know this is true, a wiser approach is to ask, what if I'm wrong? By embracing doubt, we make space for better thinking, smarter choices, and fewer costly mistakes. Hindsight bias. The I knew it all along illusion. Think back to a major event, the outcome of an election, a sports game, or a business failure. Now ask yourself, did you see it coming? Did you feel like, deep down, you always knew how it would turn out? If so, you've fallen into the trap of hindsight bias, the illusion that, after an event has happened, we always knew it was going to happen all along. This bias gives us a false sense of predictability. When we look back on history, we rewrite our own memories, making events seem inevitable. We forget how uncertain things actually were in the moment, and we underestimate how unpredictable life really is. The illusion of predictability, hindsight bias, makes us feel wiser than we actually are. It leads people to say, that was obvious, even when, at the time, the outcome was anything but. Think about major financial crashes. After they happen, analysts confidently explain why they were inevitable. But before the crash, the same experts were often completely unaware of what was coming. It happens in everyday life, too. After a relationship ends, people convince themselves they always knew it wouldn't last. After a job interview goes poorly, we say, I had a bad feeling about it. But in reality, we only construct these narratives after the fact. Why it matters, hindsight bias isn't just about distorting memory, it affects decision-making. If we believe we saw it coming, we don't analyze past mistakes properly. We stop learning. Investors become overconfident, thinking they can predict market trends. Business leaders assume success was always guaranteed, ignoring the role of luck. Even in legal cases, juries judge past decisions unfairly, believing the right course of action should have been obvious. The truth is, life is full of surprises. The world is complex, uncertain, and often unpredictable. Understanding hindsight bias helps us stay humble, question our assumptions, and recognize that the future is never as clear as it seems in hindsight. So how do we guard against hindsight bias? Start by reminding yourself how uncertain things actually were in the moment. Keep records of your predictions so you can look back and see what you really thought at the time. And most importantly, Accept that uncertainty is part of life. Instead of saying, "I knew it all along," try asking, "What can I learn from this?" That's the mindset of true wisdom. Prospect theory. Why we fear loss more than we value gain. Imagine you're given two choices. Option 1. You receive a guaranteed $900. Option 2. You have a 90% chance to win $1,000, but a 10% chance of getting nothing. Which one would you pick? If you're like most people, you'd take the sure $900. Now let's flip the scenario. Option 1. You lose $900 for certain. Option 2. You have a 90% chance to lose $1,000, but a 10% chance to lose nothing. Suddenly, the risky option seems much more appealing. Why does our decision-making change so dramatically? The answer lies in prospect theory. The pain of loss versus the pleasure of gain, developed by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Prospect theory explains how people perceive gains and losses differently. Simply put, losses hurt more than equivalent gains feel good. Winning $100 is nice, but losing $100 feels far worse. This explains why people are often risk-averse when it comes to gains, but take irrational risks to avoid losses. How this affects real-world decisions. Prospect theory shapes behavior in ways you might not realize. Investors hold onto losing stocks too long, hoping to break even rather than cutting their losses. Gamblers double down after a loss, believing they must win it back. Even in everyday life, people will go to great lengths to avoid a perceived loss, whether it's overpaying for a warranty, refusing to part with unused subscriptions, or holding onto possessions simply because they once had value. Understanding prospect theory can help you make better financial and personal decisions. Recognizing that losses loom larger than gains allows you to step back and question, am I making this choice because it's the best option, or just because I'm afraid of losing? By shifting your perspective, you can approach decisions with more clarity and less emotional weight. The substitution heuristic. When we answer the wrong question without realizing it, you're asked a complicated question, maybe about politics, the economy, or even your own future. But instead of wrestling with uncertainty, your brain does something remarkable. It replaces the difficult question with a simpler one without you even noticing. This is called the substitution heuristic, a mental shortcut that helps us process complex problems, but often leads to oversimplified and flawed answers. How your brain swaps questions without you knowing. Imagine you're asked, how happy are you with your life? That's a big, difficult question. It requires deep reflection on multiple areas: relationships, career, health, purpose. But instead of evaluating all of these factors, your brain instinctively substitutes a much easier question. How am I feeling right now? If you happen to be in a good mood, you'll likely say you're satisfied with life. If you just had a bad day, you might feel like your entire life is lacking, when in reality, not much has changed. Why this leads to biased thinking. The substitution heuristic isn't just about emotions. It influences decisions in all aspects of life. When judging a politician's competence, people often focus on how charismatic they appear rather than analyzing their actual policies. When asked whether a new product is worth buying, we might base our judgment on how attractive its packaging is rather than its true functionality. Our brain craves quick, intuitive answers, even when they aren't the right ones. Recognizing the substitution heuristic allows us to slow down and ask, am I answering the real question, or am I taking a mental shortcut? The next time you form a strong opinion, take a moment to ask yourself, is this conclusion based on deep thinking, or did my brain swap in an easier question without me noticing? By being aware of these shortcuts, we can think more clearly, question our assumptions, and make better decisions. The planning fallacy. Why everything takes longer than we expect. You start a new project, maybe writing a report, renovating your home, or launching a business. You estimate it'll take a few weeks, maybe a month. Fast forward, and you're months behind schedule, facing unexpected obstacles and wondering, how did I misjudge this so badly? Welcome to the planning fallacy, our natural tendency to underestimate how long tasks will take, even when we've faced similar delays before. Why we underestimate time and effort. The planning fallacy happens because we focus too much on best-case scenarios. We assume everything will go smoothly, ignoring past experiences that tell us otherwise. Even experts fall into this trap. Studies show that students underestimate how long assignments will take, construction projects regularly exceed their deadlines, and major government initiatives almost always run over budget. The psychology behind the bias. Why do we make this mistake repeatedly? One reason is optimism bias, the belief that this time will be different. We assume we'll be more disciplined, that delays won't happen, or that unforeseen challenges won't arise. But life is unpredictable. Unexpected setbacks, technical difficulties, supply chain issues, or even personal distractions are inevitable. So how do we combat the planning fallacy? One strategy is reference class forecasting. Instead of guessing based on your gut feeling, look at how long similar projects have actually taken. If every past home renovation you've done has taken twice as long as expected, assume this one will too. Build in extra time for unforeseen delays, and recognize that optimism alone won't change reality. The more realistic you are, the better you'll plan, and the fewer surprises you'll face. Optimism bias, the engine of capitalism. Think about entrepreneurs. Every year, millions of people start businesses, convinced they'll be the next big success. Yet, statistics tell a harsher truth. Most businesses fail within the first 5 years. So why do people take such big risks, despite the odds? The answer lies in optimism bias, our natural tendency to overestimate our chances of success while underestimating risks. Why we believe we'll beat the odds. Optimism bias is everywhere. Newlyweds believe their marriage will last forever, even when divorce rates suggest otherwise. Investors assume their picks will outperform the market. Even surgeons tend to be overconfident about the success of complex procedures. Optimism fuels ambition, pushing people to chase dreams, take risks, and build businesses. But it also blinds us to reality. We assume failures happen to other people, not to us. Optimism in business and innovation. This bias isn't just an individual trait. It's a driving force behind entire economies. Capitalism thrives on optimism. If entrepreneurs truly understood how slim their chances of success were, many would never even start. Investors fund startups believing they'll be the next Apple or Tesla, even though most fail. Nations push forward with massive projects despite overwhelming uncertainties. Optimism is what drives innovation and progress, but it can also lead to reckless risk-taking. So, should we embrace optimism bias or fight it? The answer lies in balance. Optimism fuels action, but unchecked optimism leads to poor planning. The best decision-makers are those who dream big, but prepare for setbacks. They ask, what if things go wrong? And build strategies to handle failure. Success isn't just about confidence. It's about being realistically optimistic and making decisions with both vision and caution. Regression to the mean. Why extreme success and failure rarely last. A star athlete has an incredible season, breaking records and stunning fans. The next year, their performance dips. A company experiences rapid growth, its stock price soaring, only to struggle in the following quarters. Why does this happen? More often than not, it's due to regression to the mean, the statistical tendency for extreme performances to return to a more average level over time. The illusion of permanent success or failure. When we see extraordinary success, we assume it will continue indefinitely. But many factors contribute to any performance, some within our control, some outside of it. A business might have a lucky break, an athlete may have an injury-free season, or an investor might hit a streak of good picks. But over time, these external factors tend to balance out, pulling performances back toward their historical average. How this affects our judgments. We often misinterpret regression to the mean. When a student performs poorly on a test, we assume they need drastic intervention, ignoring that their next score might naturally improve. When a CEO delivers record profits, they're praised as a genius, but when performance drops, they're suddenly seen as incompetent. In reality, extreme results are often just statistical fluctuations, not permanent trends. So how do we avoid being misled by extreme outcomes? The key is to recognize when luck, randomness, or temporary conditions may be influencing results. Instead of overreacting to highs and lows, look at long-term patterns. Sustainable success isn't about single moments of brilliance. It's about consistency over time. And once we accept that no one stays at the top forever, we can appreciate achievements without unrealistic expectations. The narrative fallacy. How we create stories to explain randomness. We love stories. From ancient myths to modern news reports, our minds crave explanations for why things happen. But what if I told you that many of the stories we tell ourselves aren't entirely true? This is the narrative fallacy, our tendency to create cause and effect explanations for events that may actually be random. Why we invent patterns. Imagine a stock market crash. Analysts rush to explain it, citing political events, interest rate changes, or investor sentiment. But sometimes, markets move unpredictably. Similarly, when a company succeeds, we attribute it to visionary leadership or brilliant strategy. Yet, many successful companies simply benefited from timing, luck, or conditions outside their control. Our brains dislike randomness, so we create patterns, even when none exist. The danger of oversimplified stories. This fallacy shapes our understanding of history, business, and even personal success. We assume that a startup succeeded because of a genius founder, when in reality, market conditions and chance played a huge role. We look at a failed project and assume it was doomed from the start, ignoring the role of unforeseen circumstances. These neat stories make us feel in control, but they distort reality. So how do we guard against the narrative fallacy? The key is to question overly simple explanations. When you hear a compelling story about success or failure, ask, what factors might I be missing? Could randomness be playing a role? By embracing uncertainty, we can think more critically and avoid being misled by stories that feel true, but aren't entirely accurate. The illusion of control. Why we overestimate our influence. Imagine you're rolling dice in a casino. When you need a high number, you throw the dice harder. When you need a low number, you toss it gently. Logically, you know the outcome is random, but part of you still feels like you have some control. This is the illusion of control, our tendency to believe we can influence outcomes that are actually determined by chance. Why we believe we have more control than we do. This bias isn't just about gambling. It appears in everyday life. Investors believe they can predict market movements, even when randomness plays a huge role. Business leaders assume their strategies alone determine success, ignoring luck and external factors. Even in sports, fans develop rituals, convinced their actions influence the game's outcome. Our minds crave control, so we see it even where it doesn't exist. The real-world consequences. The illusion of control can lead to both overconfidence and unnecessary stress. A manager might believe their leadership alone determines a company's success, leading to burnout when things go wrong. A gambler might keep betting, convinced their hot streak is skill rather than luck. When we overestimate our control, we take bigger risks and blame ourselves unfairly when things don't go as planned. How do we counteract the illusion of control? Start by recognizing when randomness is at play. Ask yourself, am I truly influencing this outcome, or just hoping I am? Understanding what we can and can't control helps us make smarter decisions, manage expectations, and focus energy where it truly matters. The endowment effect. Why we overvalue what we own. Picture this. You're holding a coffee mug. It's nothing fancy, just an ordinary cup. But now imagine someone offers you money for it. Chances are, you'll demand more than what you'd be willing to pay if the situation were reversed. Why? Because of the endowment effect, our tendency to overvalue the things we already own, simply because they belong to us. Why ownership changes perception. Once we possess something, we attach emotional significance to it. Studies show that people given a lottery ticket are reluctant to trade it, even for one with the same odds. Homeowners price their houses higher than buyers are willing to pay. Investors cling to stocks they wouldn't buy today, simply because they already own them. This bias distorts rational decision-making, making it harder to part with things, even when doing so would benefit us. The cost of holding on. The endowment effect isn't just about objects. It affects financial choices, business decisions, and even relationships. Businesses struggle to pivot because they're too attached to old strategies. Employees resist change because they feel invested in familiar routines. And we hold on to possessions, subscriptions, and ideas longer than we should, all because letting go feels like a loss. So how do we overcome the endowment effect? Start by asking, if I didn't already own this, how much would I pay for it today? Reframing decisions this way helps us separate emotional attachment from true value, leading to smarter, more objective choices. The halo effect. How first impressions shape our judgments. Imagine meeting someone for the first time. They're well-dressed, confident, and articulate. Instantly, you assume they're also intelligent, kind, and capable. But is that really true? Or are you experiencing the halo effect, a cognitive bias where our overall impression of a person, company, or product influences how we judge their unrelated traits? How one trait influences everything. The halo effect happens when a single positive characteristic, like attractiveness, charisma, or success, colors our perception of unrelated qualities. This is why good-looking people are often assumed to be more competent. It's why a prestigious brand can sell mediocre products at a premium price. And it's why we sometimes put too much trust in leaders, celebrities, or experts simply because they seem impressive. The hidden consequences. This bias affects hiring decisions, marketing strategies, and even courtroom judgments. Studies show that juries are more likely to be lenient toward attractive defendants. Job candidates with polished appearances often get hired over equally qualified peers. And in business, a single successful product can make an entire company seem infallible until reality proves otherwise. So how do we counteract the halo effect? Start by separating first impressions from actual performance. Ask, am I judging this person or thing fairly, or am I being influenced by one standout trait? By questioning our instincts, we can make more balanced, rational decisions, seeing people and situations for what they truly are, rather than how they initially appear. The halo effect. How first impressions shape our judgments. Imagine meeting someone for the first time. They're well-dressed, confident, and articulate. Instantly, you assume they're also intelligent, kind, and capable. But is that really true? Or are you experiencing the halo effect, a cognitive bias where our overall impression of a person, company, or product influences how we judge their unrelated traits? How one trait influences everything. The halo effect happens when a single positive characteristic, like attractiveness, charisma, or success, colors our perception of unrelated qualities. This is why good-looking people are often assumed to be more competent. It's why a prestigious brand can sell mediocre products at a premium price. And it's why we sometimes put too much trust in leaders, celebrities, or experts simply because they seem impressive. The hidden consequences. This bias affects hiring decisions, marketing strategies, and even courtroom judgments. Studies show that juries are more likely to be lenient toward attractive defendants. Job candidates with polished appearances often get hired over equally qualified peers. And in business, a single successful product can make an entire company seem infallible until reality proves otherwise. So how do we counteract the halo effect? Start by separating first impressions from actual performance. Ask, am I judging this person or thing fairly, or am I being influenced by one standout trait? By questioning our instincts, we can make more balanced, rational decisions, seeing people and situations for what they truly are, rather than how they initially appear. Experiencing versus remembering self. Why our memories distort reality. Imagine you're on vacation, relaxing on a beach, watching the sunset. Everything feels perfect. But on the last day, something goes wrong. Your flight is canceled, or you lose your wallet. Later, when you look back, what do you remember more? The joy or the frustration? This is the battle between your experiencing self and your remembering self. The two selves of our mind. The experiencing self lives in the present. It feels every moment as it happens. The remembering self, however, is the one that tells the story afterward. And here's the catch. The remembering self doesn't record everything. It distorts reality by emphasizing peaks, endings, and dramatic moments. This is why we sometimes misjudge how enjoyable or painful an experience actually was. Why memories don't always reflect reality. Studies show that a painful medical procedure feels less distressing if it ends on a relatively mild note, even if the overall experience was longer. Similarly, we might remember an event as wonderful because of a single highlight, even if much of it was ordinary. Our memories don't work like a video recording. They're stories shaped by emotions, expectations, and selective recall. So how can we use this knowledge? First, Be aware that your past experiences might not be as good or as bad as you remember. Second, if you want to create lasting positive memories, focus on crafting strong endings and meaningful moments. Understanding the difference between the experiencing and remembering self allows us to make better decisions, not just for how we live, but for how we reflect on life itself. The focusing illusion. Why we overestimate what matters. If someone asked you, would moving to a sunny place make you happier? You might instantly think, of course. After all, warm weather, beaches, and blue skies sound like the perfect ingredients for a joyful life. But here's the twist. While you're focusing on the sunshine, you're ignoring everything else. This is the focusing illusion, the tendency to exaggerate the importance of one factor while overlooking the bigger picture. Why we fixate on certain factors. Our minds love simple explanations. If we're unhappy, we assume a big change, like a new job, a new city, or more money, will fix everything. But research shows that while these factors matter, they rarely have as much impact as we expect. We focus intensely on one aspect of life, forgetting that happiness depends on a complex mix of relationships, daily routines, health, and mindset. How the illusion misguides decisions. Marketers and politicians use the focusing illusion to shape our decisions. A car commercial highlights speed and luxury, making us forget about gas mileage and maintenance costs. A politician promises that lowering taxes will solve all problems, ignoring deeper economic complexities. When we fixate on one detail, we lose sight of the full picture. So how do we escape the focusing illusion? The key is to step back and ask, what else matters? Instead of obsessing over a single factor, consider the full range of influences on your happiness or decision. When you widen your perspective, you make smarter, more balanced choices, seeing life as it truly is, not just how one detail makes it seem. Conclusion. Rethinking how we think, we've explored the hidden forces that shape our decisions, the mental shortcuts, the biases, and the illusions that influence how we see the world. From the contrast between System 1 and System 2, thinking to the traps of overconfidence, hindsight bias, and the focusing illusion, we've uncovered how our minds often mislead us. But now comes the most important question. What can we do with this knowledge? Understanding how we think gives us power. The power to challenge our assumptions, to pause before making impulsive decisions, and to recognize when our intuition might be leading us astray. It's not about eliminating biases entirely. That's impossible. Instead, it's about awareness, catching ourselves in the act, questioning our thought processes, and making choices with greater clarity. Applying these lessons to everyday life. So how do we put this into practice? Here are 3 key takeaways. 1. Slow down when it matters. Not every decision needs deep analysis, but for important choices, investments, career moves, relationships, engage System 2. Take time to think critically instead of relying on gut reactions. 2. Recognize your biases. When you feel absolutely certain about something, ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? Challenge your instincts, seek different perspectives, and consider alternative explanations. 3. Widen your perspective. Don't let one factor, money, location, status, dominate your decisions. Remember the focusing illusion and step back to see the bigger picture. Small shifts in awareness can lead to better choices, smarter decisions, and ultimately, a clearer understanding of the world around us. I hope these insights inspire you to rethink how you think, question the stories your mind tells you, and approach life's decisions with a new level of awareness. If you found this valuable, be sure to subscribe for more audiobook summaries and deep dives into the fascinating world of psychology and decision-making. Until next time, think wisely and think well.